Howdy, y'all. I just wanted to dive right in. I've been watching a lot of the stolenhistory.org videos and articles. I've been doing a lot of browsing there, a lot of John Levi videos, amongst others on the YouTube. And I just wanted to spark my own interest, as I live in Pennsylvania, so I know there's a lot of history that goes on here, and there's been people here in Pennsylvania for, as long as Americans, quote unquote, have been in America, as it became called. So I just started diving in right away to things right around my local area, and almost instantaneously I found something that kind of struck my interest, and that would be the Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge. Now, this is a bridge that goes across the Susquehanna River. But what's interesting about this bridge is the original one is said to have been built in 1812 is when construction began, 1812. And this spans across the width of the Susquehanna River. So you're probably wondering, well, how wide is that? This bridge was well over 1 mile long. A 1 mile plus bridge that was built in 1812. And that by itself was already, kind of mind-blowing. But furthermore, if you're familiar with Pennsylvania at all, there are a lot of Amish here, and one of their key building structures that you put to their name is their covered bridges. There's umpteen covered bridges just in the area that I live, that I see, every once in a while if I'm taking a back road. They're usually back by their farms, crossing, small lakes, small streams, things like that. But they're known for their covered bridges. It's something that they build very, very well. And now, back to this Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge, over a mile long, built in 1812. There's a fully covered bridge. The world's longest covered bridge. And this is 1812. And this is the world's longest covered bridge built in Lancaster County, Columbia, Pennsylvania. So that by itself was a very interesting to me. Now the bridge itself it's not freestanding, obviously. It is supported, and it's not supported, by one or two supports, in the water. It's literally, there are big just rock formations that somehow they got in the river the whole way across the river. One maybe every 30, 45 meters or so, there's just a big chunk of rock, one on either side of the bridge's width. So one on the left and one on the right side, two next to each other, just expanding across the whole length of the bridge, which means somehow they took some sort of equipment in the middle of the river and were able to build huge stone platforms in the year of 1812. And on these platforms, they constructed the world's longest covered bridge. Mind-blowing. Now, I just want to dive in a little bit to what Wikipedia tells us about this bridge. The construction of the first Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge began in 1812 and was completed in 1814. The constructors, or designers, architects, as we'll call them, were J. Walcott and H. Slaymaker. Obviously, no links on Wikipedia to any information about them. The bridge cost $232,000, and that is in 1812. And it was underwritten by the newly formed Columbia Bank and Bridge Company. The bridge was 5,700 feet long and 30 feet wide. It had 54 piers and twin carriageways. It was constructed of wood, stone, with a wood roof, a whitewashed interior, and windows in the sides for viewing the river. There was a toll at the time of $150, which also, when I read that, kind of blew my mind because that seems like a lot of money for 1812. I mean, there's tolls in 2019 that are $150, but tolls were $150 for the wagon and 6 horses. Or, okay, this makes more sense, or 6 cents for a pedestrian. Now, this was funny when I read it because I don't know if things changed until the second rendition of the bridge was built, but for the first bridge, the one built in 1812, it says it was considered the longest bridge in the world at the time. And then it says that the bridge was destroyed in 1832 by severe weather. So what did they do? They went ahead and they constructed a second Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge. What did they use? Well, they used the same exact platforms that the first bridge was on. Basically, they just took all the wood and the stone that they had put on top of the larger stones, and they just threw that to the wind and cleared that all off because that's how solid these stone platforms they built were. They just tore everything off of them and put a whole new bridge right on top. And now this second bridge was built, it began in 1832 when the first one was destroyed, they say, and the second bridge was completed in 34. And this time we have full names completed by James Moore and John Evans. Still, no link, but at least we have full names. The second bridge cost $157,000, and this one was slightly shorter by about 70 feet and 2 feet less wide at 28 feet. But what's odd is this second bridge, they say on Wikipedia, enjoyed the distinction of being the world's longest covered bridge. So the second one for sure was the world's longest bridge, while the first bridge, which was longer, was only considered. So that may just be attributed to word not being spread properly at the time and not proper documentation, but you know, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, as I think these bridges could have been here for a lot longer than we give them credit for. Now, the second bridge that we're discussing currently was also built of wood and stone. This one had 27 piers, a carriageway, a walkway, and its roof had shingles. It was modified then in 1840, so 6 years after it was completed, at a cost of $40,000, concurrent with the construction of the Wrightsville Dam. So, you get a dam built, you gotta amend the bridge a little bit. It makes sense. It's just a matter of how exactly they were going about doing all of this at the time. Interestingly, on the second bridge, towpaths at different levels and sidewalls were added to prevent horses from falling in the river, which seemed to happen often when the river flooded. So, one can think that this bridge was pretty close to water level. It wasn't sitting too high above the water. And it seems to point to this in the Wikipedia page, as it says canal boats could not cross under the bridge. Sometime after 1846, a double-track railway was added, which would link the Philadelphia and Columbia Railroad to the North Central Railway. But due to a fear of fire by these locomotives, the railway cars were pulled by horses. That's right. They added a railroad track to this man-made covered bridge that's just sitting on a bunch of stones that we threw in the middle of the Susquehanna River. They added a double-track railway to this. And then instead of letting the rail cars use the bridge while in motion, or while fired up, we'll say, the rail cars were slowly pulled across by a team of horses. If that is not interesting, I don't know what is. But now here's where we get into what I think is a little bit of the meat and potatoes of the Wrightsville Columbia Bridge. During the Civil War, this bridge played apparently a huge impact, while also not exactly having anything done to it per se. It wasn't destroyed under anyone's command, but it was severely damaged in the Civil War. Now, apparently, the whole time, the area on the Columbia side, the Lancaster County side of the bridge was occupied by Union soldiers. And apparently, this bridge was in the mind of Robert E. Lee, who ordered to burn the bridge. But it says, and this is all according to Wikipedia, so like I said, take it with a grain of salt. Civilian volunteers then mined the bridge, originally hoping to drop the bridge into the river, and they detonated small portions of dynamite. And this was to stop the Confederates from coming into Union-occupied Columbia, Lancaster. So civilians dynamited the bridge, but it didn't destroy the bridge. So Confederates advanced on the bridge anyway, and eventually, once the Confederates began to cross the bridge, it somehow, and this is quote for quote, the entire structure soon caught fire and completely burned in 6 hours. Period. That's all they say about what happened. So they give a lot of hypothetical, but there is really no evidence as to what happened. It says that Confederate Generals Jubal A. Early and John B. Gordon planned to save the bridge after Robert E. Lee ordered to burn it, but then Union forces under Colonel Jacob Frick burned the bridge anyway, hoping to defend it later and save it. So that is a convoluted piece of work right there. And now, after all of that, the Columbia Bank and Bridge Company appealed to the federal government for reimbursement, and this is after the Civil War. And the bank then sold all its interest in the bridge and the bridge's piers to the Pennsylvania Railroad. So there's that. So both sides wanted to destroy it, and both sides also wanted to save it somehow. Both sides tried to destroy it while there was the other side's troops on it. And apparently the madman himself, Robert E. Lee, personally ordered the bridge be destroyed. So that's very interesting, because growing up in school, I was never taught any of that, especially living in this area. I was never told that this bridge was a huge part in a apparent battle that happened in Columbia-Wrightsville. So that in itself, interesting. So anyway, after the war, a third bridge was built, and this began in 1868, and this bridge was even more quickly built. Interestingly, there is not a lot of information on the third bridge, but they do say that it cost $400,000. This one was the first of the bridges to be built and include steel, and it also included a carriageway, a railway, and a walkway. Now, this is the one that I have some pictures for that I'm going to throw up if I turn this, audio into a video. They'll be on the screen throughout this for you to check out. But this third bridge, right, was destroyed, and this is how the narrative goes, on September 30th, 1896, by the 1896 Cedar Keys hurricane. And if you look at some of the images from this, I mean, the bridge just looks remarkable. I mean, even the first two renditions of it that we've been talking about, they sound remarkable. I don't know why I guess for war, anything happens in war, but I don't know why, they would design such a nice covered bridge to span such an area that it wouldn't necessarily even be used for tourism. I don't know who in the mid 1800s would have used this long over a mile long bridge to walk across, just to look at the Susquehanna River and just to go to the other side. Because if you're familiar with the area, there's still really nothing there on the other side. Once you go from Columbia over to Wrightsville, once you cross the bridge, there's like a little town that's there that seems very modern, but beyond that, it's just forest land and forest land. There's highway cutting through it, but it's just forest and forest and forest. So there's not really a reason in my head why this bridge would have been built so refined in the 1812, 1814, 1832 time period, but that's just me. So anyway, the third bridge was destroyed 1896 in the Cedar Keys hurricane. And the fourth bridge, and this is where things get super, super weird, the fourth bridge, also known as the Pennsylvania Railroad's Iron Bridge, was started on April 16th, 1897. And this mile-long bridge was completed on May 11th, 1897. So let me say that again. Over a mile-long bridge, built across the Susquehanna, that is built on top of rocks and stones. Big piles of them, huge slabs that we dropped in the river in the early 1800s. We then took those big rock slabs, and from April 16th until May 11th of the same year, in less than 1 month, built a mile-long bridge called the Iron Bridge. It was considered the fastest bridge building job ever in the world. Period. That was it. It was considered the fastest bridge building job in the world. A steel truss bridge made of 200-foot-long prefabricated sections was designed to be resistant to fire, ice, water, wind, and elements that had destroyed all the previous wooden structures. Like the bridges previously, tolls were collected, and they're saying that even at the time, it was over a $500,000 investment. The bridge opened on June 7th, 1897, and it could carry pedestrians, it could carry rail cars, it could carry trains, it could carry you and your carriage, twin carriageways actually, and it was very, very, very interesting. And even furthermore, and this just keeps adding fuel to the fire, at least mentally for me, to wonder what was really going on back then, is that even though the bridge opened on June 7th, 1897, which is less than 2 months after construction began and less than a month after it was completed, the bridge remained known as an uncompleted project because on top of this over a mile long, I always want to say mile, over this mile plus covered bridge, they wanted to build an upper deck. That's right, across this mile plus expansion across the Susquehanna River, we had people who were building mile plus long covered bridges, first out of wood and then out of steel. And then after they were done building them, they wanted to put over a mile long deck on top where it would be fully furnished and would allow pedestrians to relax and hang out on this bridge. It's mind-boggling. It says on Wikipedia, with the completion of the Lincoln Highway, which would be Highway 1, in 1925, vehicular traffic routinely jammed, and vehicles had to wait for trains to pass before crossing the bridge, since the bridge was shared. So because of all this, a fifth bridge, the Veterans Memorial Bridge, was planned and later erected to accommodate vehicle and pedestrian traffic. The Iron Bridge, the fourth Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge, carried passenger trains until 1954 and freight traffic until 1958, and was dismantled for scrap starting in 1963 and ending in 1964. However, the stone piers, which I know this for a fact, dating to pre-Civil War times, still stand today. And I've driven over the new Veterans Memorial Bridge multiple times, and I've always, even since I was a little kid, I've seen the small stone piers, and I've always wondered, what were those? You know, like in my head, it looks like there was some sort of megalithic structure that could have been built there. Not another bridge, but something, you know, almost more sophisticated. That's what it looks like. But it's just very interesting to me that no one talks about all the renditions of this bridge. You know, everybody talks about the new bridge that was built, the Veterans Memorial Bridge that is still standing today. That's not a covered bridge. That is I want to say 8-lane highway, 4 lanes going each way, that crosses the Columbia-Wrightsville Bridges area. It's literally maybe a quarter mile up the river, up the Susquehanna River. It's probably the same distance, but what's interesting to me, I actually looked it up, and it appears that the new bridge, the Veterans Memorial Bridge, the modern bridge, is actually at a smaller part of the river than the old bridges. The old bridges used to go across the river at a wider part of the river, meaning the bridges were longer. So it's all very, very interesting to me, and it almost fits the narrative of hidden history, you know, of something that people were trying to hide, because you would think that it would be spoken of more. You would think that on these construction shows, on these architecture shows, you would talk about almost a mile and a half long covered bridge that existed in the year of 1814. And you would think that you would talk about a bridge that stood during the Civil War, that the general himself, Robert E. Lee, the madman, said that he wanted to be burnt to the ground. And then there was some sort of battle or advancement of troops where the bridge was burnt down with the troops advancing on the bridge, and both sides wanted to burn it down for different reasons. You would think that would be something that was talked about. And furthermore, with the interesting pictures that I've discovered, and these pictures were not, I said that they were easy to find when I first started recording this video, but that's because I kind of knew where to look. I knew what keywords to look up, so I kind of began my search on another building in Lancaster called, I think it's the Grist building, that was built in the early 1900s, skyscraper. over 200 feet tall in the small little city of Lancaster in the early 1900s. Another fun fact for you, not to go off topic, but the Grice building is still taller than the tallest building in, I think it is 4 or 5 other states. There's like 4 or 5 states that still don't have a building that's over 210 feet. So that by itself was interesting. Little Lancaster, PA has this huge building. But I started looking up there, and then I went with construction photos from there, and I found construction photos of the Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge from the early 1900s and even before that, the late 1800s. And I had to do more research. So I'm going to leave it with you. I'm going to leave these interesting thoughts floating around in your head, because a lot of you collectively give me ideas, so I don't want to make any speculations that are too extreme. I just want to say that the whole narrative behind this bridge and the fact that they could build it in 1812 in the middle of a huge river really blows my mind. So that's a little bit of recent history. Well, I'd say not so recent history that has me thinking. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to maybe bringing you guys some more information soon. God bless.